Hey, tourpreneurs, it's Mitch Bach, and just a quick note before we begin today's episode. Tourpreneur is currently sponsored by Google. We're thankful for their support of our community, and we are offering with them a completely free course helping you unlock the power and potential of Google's Things to Do program, which is specifically helping tour operators add their tours to Google in new ways that gives you new exposure and more direct bookings. To learn more, go to tourpreneur.com/Google. And as always, show notes, more resources, links to our newsletter, our business coaching community, and so much more are available on tourpreneur.com. Now to the episode.
Welcome to the Tourpreneur podcast. Travel industry veteran Shane Whaley will take you on a journey with fellow tourpreneurs, sharing their tips, ideas, insights, and success stories to inspire you to make your tour business the best it can be.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Arival Online, insights that matter in challenging times for operators of tours, activities, attractions, events, and experiences, all of the things that travelers do when they get there. I'm Douglas Quinby, co-founder and CEO of Arival, and really excited to have with us today leaders from 4 reservation technology companies. So we have Maria, and Maria, forgive me, I hope I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Aivalioti. Is that, how close am I?
You are so close, Maria Aivalioti.
Okay. So Maria, welcome, the COO of Travelotopos from Athens. We have Hjalti Baldursson, the CEO of Bokun from Iceland, Scott Zimmerman, the CEO of Xola, and Kory Fawcett, the CEO from Zaui Software. I think, Kory, you're in Canada and Vancouver or nearby. And Scott, are you in San Francisco in the Bay Area?
Correct.
Yep. Yeah, fantastic. So we have a lot to talk about on kind of the role of ResTech in the current situation that we're going through and what is going to be the future of the ResTech landscape. What should operators and also distributors know? How is this landscape going to change? What does this mean for all of you? You know, what are you seeing? Like, what's happening? And are you seeing any indicators, any signals? Are there places where bookings are happening? Are you seeing people, searching? What do you see across the systems that you're looking at and your clients? What's happening? So, Hjalti, I'll start with you. I see you nodding your head a little bit.
Yeah, we're in a pretty unique position because we're a global software, so we have customers in almost every country. And I looked at this, the data this morning, and I'm simply not seeing an uplift in any country out of the 180 countries or something like that. Because I was primarily looking for Asia, because we've seen positive signs from Asia in terms of air traffic and other general positive news, but right now, it has not translated into bookings as far as I can see.
Maria, what about you? You seeing what has the impact on your business been total? Are you seeing any bookings or any positive signals?
We have received plenty of cancellations, and for about 2 or 3 weeks, we have a complete freeze of reservations. But what I see more and more travelers trying to reschedule their reservations. So I think this is an indicator that people want to travel. They don't want to cancel. So they have in mind that they're going to travel again. So in my opinion, it's really hard to make predictions right now because we don't even know when the airports are going to open. What we have to do is to stay calm, and from the end of May, beginning of June, we are going to see the tendency. Then we can measure what is going to happen in the upcoming season for 2020.
For the reschedulings that you're seeing, is that Q3? Is it Q4? Or are you seeing people rebook for 2021? What's the window you're seeing there?
Most of them are for September and October. These are the indicators I have right now. Less in 2021. But I see rescheduling. I see that. So I think this is something that has to, I'm optimistic and I'm convinced that people will travel again, will not stop traveling. Maybe they're going to change their behavior, their expectations will be different from us and from the operators. But I'm positive and confident that they're going to travel again.
So that's a really huge topic on how is this going to be different once we come out of this. And I definitely want to spend some time and come back to that in just a moment. But so Kory, just, from your side, what are you seeing among Zaui customers?
Mostly the same thing. Largely most of our customers have closed their doors, laid staff off, seasonal staff. They've gone into almost hibernation, stasis mode. What we see on our platform is we see a bit of trickling reservations come through on the transportation side off in the future. Again, like Maria's saying, September, October, November, but we would anticipate those would be pushed off or postponed as we go deeper into the summer. In terms of interaction on our platform, we're still seeing about 50% of our customer base still interacting with the platform, which kind of indicates potentially that they're using this time to work on their businesses, work on products. We're seeing some initial steps on pivot moves. So those companies who have transportation fleets, for example, bus fleets, sightseeing tour fleets, they're attempting to repurpose a lot of those vehicles, whether it's patient transport, and in some cases, which I just learned this past week, some are getting into food delivery now.
Yeah, there's been some interesting models. What about virtual tours? That's also something that people are talking about. Are you seeing, and I just open this up to everyone, are any of your customers creating virtual tours, and are you facilitating bookings for those?
I'll jump in there. We have seen some. One that came to light this week was virtualized wine tours, which was kind of interesting. Ship the wine to you first, jump online, do the wine tasting and learn. I personally haven't seen anything quite move the needle in terms of online reservations or forward bookings for any of those yet. I think it's a little bit too early, but I'm encouraged with the creativity that the environment's created for a lot of our customers.
And Scott, what about for you at Xola?
Yeah, I've really been impressed at the creativity. A lot of folks are breaking the mold and really putting their minds to work during this time, which is also very stressful. But for example, there are a couple on virtual tours. We have had one escape room do a virtual puzzle. So you'll actually book it. They'll mail you the materials and then you can solve a puzzle there at home. That's really interesting. Another provider has built a software to a mobile application to actually manage virtual tours, to record it, document it. And it's actually quite a bit of functionality. He was working on it before COVID-19. And so it was really just coincidental because there's a lot more functionality that can just be made as a pop-up tent. So we're actually going to be hosting him this Friday in a webinar to share that. And we're seeing sort of virtual wine tours pop up as well. But nothing really is, it's hard to kickstart that,
Yeah, I on the virtual tour front, I've kind of posed this question too on social. So where I struggle with is, given the effort, the time that it takes to create it, the energy on the part of operators and the cost involved, I'm struggle with the idea of, I'm going to pay $15 for a virtual, tour of the Coliseum when I just paid my $14 monthly subscription to Netflix, which I've got, unlimited. So I'm trying to kind of figure out, is there really, is this a meaningful, business opportunity at all? Or is this simply something for operators to pass the time with and maybe just to engage with a few of their most committed customers?
Yeah, it's hard to know. The jury's out, and I'm certainly interested in that. I'd love to see, tune into that webinar that you've got coming up on virtual tours as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll just I've done this on a couple of my online events, so just very quickly, just a quick a lightning round question. I'll just go for each of you with with a yes or no. So, would you recommend your customers go all in and produce virtual tours? Kory, what would you say? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah, Hjalti, what about you?
If you would take out the, go all in, I would say yes, but don't place all your bets on one product that is untested.
Maria, what about you?
I'm not sure. I think it depends on the activity, on the type of the activity. If it's an attraction, yes, this could be very good to do it. If you have a sailing company, I don't know, maybe you could use a virtual tour just to give a taste of what it would be if you do it by yourself and be there and have all the experience all the way. So I think it depends on the type of the activity.
And Scott, that sounds like you're be more on the yes side.
Yeah, I'd say brainstorm with it. Definitely worth the brainstorm and experiment, even try it, test it, go all in. No, I think it's worth the experimentation. So.
All right, so I want to talk a bit about the role. What's the role for ResTech? In a situation that we're in, how can ResTech companies support the operator community? I mean, we're really, we're in a pretty profound state of uncertainty right now. There have been different calls from operators. They want to see online travel agencies, say, reduce commission or maybe even defer commission payments, for example. What are you doing to support your operator community today? Maria, I'll start with you.
The first thing we did is to have a team of experts that come from the travel industry and to consult our operators for the current and for the next day after the pandemic. So we have created a team that assists our operators on their strategy and on their reopening plan. This is the first thing we did. Secondly, what we did is to analyze more data, to study what happened in similar situation in the past. This is the first thing we did. And then,
can I just ask, has that really been helpful? I mean, if I think about the closest similar situation would be something like SARS, for example, 15 years ago or almost 20 years ago. But even in that situation, like SARS, I think in total 900 people died, whereas we're seeing, in the United States alone, 900 people died yesterday, right? So is that really I think we've all looked at this, but then we look at the historical, there is no historical precedent. Like, where do we start?
But maybe we could think of 9/11. When the airports shut down and when we were all saying that nobody's going to travel again. And we saw that people travel more. So it's not just, you don't have to go only, find similar situation. Let's say that it was like a pandemic, but I think 9/11 could be something that we can earn from. We can see the data from this past situation, this past incident, and we can kind of predict what is going to happen. So we have a strategy plan. We have a team from experts that help our operators or assist our operators for their reopening plan. We help them review their cancellation policies. We work with gift vouchers, of course. This is a hot topic right now.
Mm-hmm.
And
sure.
We examine the virtual tours and how this could be an option now for our operators. So we try to evaluate any critical situation. We are in a constant evaluation.
So yeah, certainly consulting and evaluation is hugely important, but Hjalti, let me kind of throw this to you. I think, one of the things that I thought was quite interesting. So the team at GlobalTix this week announced that they were giving their software away for free for the rest of the year, and they weren't going to charge their current customers. What about other ResTech? Can other ResTech companies follow suit? Is that something that you guys are looking at?
Well, first of all, when we get no bookings, Bokun is free. Because we charge for the booking. So it would be I think it's an interesting perspective to come out and say, we'll not get any money anyway, so let's just make it free. But we're open to all kinds of ways moving forward. I think we need to see a little bit how this develops. I mean, we're just in the storm right now. So what is happening right now is that many countries are getting sort of not past the curve, but starting to talk about how do we move out of this. And immediately, the first thing that doctors say in quite many countries is like, hey, okay, let's just move to the new normal. In the new normal, there's no travel. Please do not, we advise against travel. So what does that mean for us? So if we think about this a little bit more holistically, what are our suppliers thinking about? They're not thinking about this. I mean, I was speaking to a few large suppliers last week, and one of the best operators I know, best operated company I know, they were thinking about, should we hibernate for 1 year or 2 years? Because we don't know what will happen next year. Will the rebound be 10%, 20%, 50%, 70%? Certainly is not going to go back to 2019 levels. And if you're operating your business based on data and you want to make a plan and you want to be profitable, then it's just not a very interesting environment to be in. So this is sort of, what our suppliers are thinking about right now. Of course, they're thinking about more tactical things as well, and we're helping them out with that. Trying to optimize their products, and some of the suppliers are engaged. We have like 500 people registering for a webinar on websites last week. So it's not like it's all doomsday, but in reality, the CEOs are thinking about their cost. How do they survive this? That is number 1, 2, 3, and 4 in all of my discussions with them. It's not on, how do I go in and get that domestic travel that will be here in 3 weeks. And I'm not saying that that's the right strategy. I'm just saying, I'm echoing what I hear from the suppliers that I speak to.
Kory, I mean, what are you doing to help operators? What's the role of ResTech in a situation like we're facing today?
Yeah, I think we've been trying to break that down into kind of short, medium, and long term. And the long term obviously is changing and evolving. We started reaching out to all of our key suppliers, operators, partners in the industry, even our competition, end of February, well into March, mostly just checking in to see what's happening, what are they seeing, does that align with what we're seeing throughout the industry. We helped announcing any government programs that we could see on the horizon. Would help shore up any revenue that they had within their companies for the suppliers. I mean, listen, it's a community effort the whole way through. Their success is our success. Everyone that's on this panel here is in the same boat, essentially. So it's a challenge all the way through. Going back to kind of what you were mentioning before, some of the things I'm drawing on is kind of leadership roles in terms of passing that information on to our partners. I look back and there's some similarities to the .com that I remember. 9/11 comes to mind, SARS, since we had that in Vancouver and Toronto here. And SARS in Vancouver here, not many people remember that because it was so small, but it actually cratered the industry for a year to year and a half here with the hoteliers. And a lot of our customers in those areas rely heavily on hotels, concierge staff, et cetera, for bookings and advanced bookings. So passing on as much information as you possibly can to disseminate that and learn from that is kind of the short, medium term. Long term will be, how do you actually rebound from this? This feels like a market compression to me, and how far it's going to compress, we don't really know. And how elastic your companies are on the other end are going to guarantee the rebound that you're going to have. As Hjalti pointed out, is for us, it's about cash flow, essentially. Cash flow and burn rates and really controlling that. And that should be a message for all the suppliers in the industry also, is to monitor that heavily, understand it, but be positioned for a rebound when the rebound actually comes, and watch for market signals for when that actually happens.
So Scott, Maria brought up the question of vouchers and I think gift cards. It's also been a pretty hotly discussed topic. Do you see that as something that operators should be pursuing? Is that an area where ResTech companies can help operators?
Absolutely. I think, speaking to what Kory just mentioned, cash flow is a big piece of this. That's what everyone's grappling with. We have functionality around store credit and gifts. With store credit, it's a way to keep that revenue in the business, and it's sort of open to be redeemed at a later point in time. We've very much encouraged providers to take advantage of that functionality. We see many people do that really with great success. I think there are exceptions in terms of how, if there's international arrivals and travel, there's cancellation full refund that has less utility. There's a lot of domestic consumption of tours. And so there's a good portion of our bookings that really we see folks using store credit. When it starts to get immediate, sort of of all of our outstanding bookings that we see across the platform, about 50% of them are within the next 2 months. So that is really the most vulnerable sort of subset of bookings to manage, whether it's cancellation, full refund, store credits, or rescheduling. And we really have seen far less activity touching anything beyond 2 months. It's really been in the month in front of us. And so it may continue to be a rolling process. But I think folks are beginning to see Europe easing or speaking about easing, containment measures. And I think folks are hopeful that the US will soon follow. No one has a crystal ball on that, but I think that really it's been the most immediate bookings, the 4 to 6 weeks in front of us that we've seen the most activity. And then I think there's a watch and wait for the rest of the bookings.
So just on the issue of kind of vouchers or store credit, though, what happens in the case where the operator, there's a possibility, they may not be around in 6 months. What happens at that point? It's kind of like adding basically more liability to the books for the operator. Or in the case of, where the reservation system, their payment model where they are really the merchant of record, say with Stripe or another payment provider, is there a risk of liability that would then fall on the reservation system as well?
Yeah, I think that, any deferred income or outstanding, payment for services not yet rendered is an outstanding liability in any way, shape, or form, as you point out. And so there is in that liability chain through the entire ecosystem, right? From the customer, then the tour operator, the payment processor, and then later, the very foundation, whether it's First Data, Wells Fargo, or whoever else is in the payments chain. I think what we've seen is, we see a lot of operators take swift action to, as Kory mentioned, furlough staff or lay people off, go into hibernation mode, and really limit. A lot of them haven't really hired out and expanded their staffing requirements that you see in the seasonal businesses. So they really haven't accumulated the burn yet. And so they're sort of like in hibernation mode to where, a lot of folks are certainly stressed financially, but they got a plan to get through it. And I think that if the containment measures last until, say, early May and start to ease, that's a more promising sign. I think a lot of if there's containment measure that goes on for 4 months, then I think a lot of businesses outside of travel and travel are going to be in trouble. So
what about
we're hopeful that that'll be earlier.
There's been a lot of discussion in among our industry and certainly in our online events on the future of the operator community. So what about the future of ResTech? So there's by our count, there's upwards of 150 of you guys out there of ResTech companies. A lot of them are kind of small, kind of homegrown or kind of family-run operations, but you have many that have raised a lot of venture capital. A lot of them with kind of payment models that, like in the case of like Hjalti said, where you only get revenue when there are bookings. So I would imagine that there's a lot of stress that's on the ResTech community as well. Hjalti, what's your kind of view on the future of this landscape? Are there going to be a lot fewer than 150 ResTech companies when we come out of this?
I would think about it a little bit differently. Of course, the same principles apply to us as other businesses. We need to pivot, we need to be nimble and agile, and we need to go essentially where the business is. I think we have to also think about that there has been a lot of consolidation in the past 2 years. As an example, for channel management, Bokun has around 72% of the connected products on Viator and TripAdvisor. So quite a lot of the products that are connected and are online already on Bokun. And I think this is something that happens in most industries. There will be a couple of, how should I put it, general larger players. And then you will have a lot of smaller players that go for niches and specialize in something. And there's a need for that. And we see that in most industries. And I think this will happen. And I hope it will happen. And I don't think there will be fewer players servicing our industry. I think there will be more because it's a very interesting and rising industry that is really only taking the first steps. I mean, it's a fairly new industry. It's not like the hotel industry, and it's much more diversified and in many ways interesting, in my opinion. So what I think will essentially happen is that we'll have a few maybe larger ones, and then a lot of smaller ones that will accommodate the needs of the supplier. And by the way, I think many of these software companies will need to downsize. That's clear. Just like any other companies in the world, they need to downsize. But I still very well remember how powerful, for example, Bokun was when we were only 10. And we could do a lot of things that nobody else had done before us. You don't really need to be, a 1,000 people or 1,000 person company to be innovative and disrupt the industry. So I think as long as there is growth in our industry, it's interesting, and there is probably going to be growth. And I think we'll see a lot of development and new companies coming into the industry in the next 2-3 years, because I think the companies, the suppliers, are more open now to innovation than they maybe were a few months ago. And we saw this quite well after, the ash cloud in Iceland and drop-in tourism there. Exactly the same, or maybe not exactly the same, but the same principles that, you can really innovate and do new things in an environment like this.
Maria, so you representing, I think, one of the smaller companies. If I recall, you had, I think, fewer than 15 employees the last time that we spoke. How do you agree with Hjalti? How do you feel about your position in the market, given everything that's going on?
I agree with, yes, you can be innovative with less than 1,000 of people. That's for sure. And you may have quality in your services, even if your team is smaller than the other teams. So when an operator decides which booking engine or reservation software is going to choose, he's going to examine the support, for example, the quality of the support, because I think the features and the systems are kind of the same. We are similar. So the agreement, the contract, who collects your money, the payment fees is one of the core things someone is going to examine when deciding which system to choose. And Travelotopos, we have a great team. We are innovative. We have 4 different booking systems for each sector. And I think we cope really well, and we are very healthy in terms of financing.
So there are a number of questions that I do want to get to, some of our attendee questions. And there's one kind of broad theme I'm seeing among some of the questions around kind of the future, like how is this going to change the ResTech landscape from a feature and functionality standpoint? What are some of the things that you're thinking about? The question at the top really has to do with API connectivity. And I think this is from Dominique, specifically asking about connectivity, it looks like across res systems so that operators can cross-sell one another. I think when I think of connectivity, I typically think of it as, a res system to an onward distributor like an online travel agency or another, another distribution channel. But this is actually an interesting idea. My sense has been res tech companies are kind of they're competitive, so they're not going to connect. They're not going to connect with one another unless they're clearly not competitive in some way. But Kory, what's your view on connectivity in a post COVID landscape? Is this going to increase? And would you build a connection to a direct competitor of yours so that one of your customers could cross sell another operator's product without having to go through an OTA?
Yeah, for sure. So it's probably no secret, I'm a huge advocate of that. We started about 3 or 4 years ago doing just that in the industry, building into competitor systems, but also mostly driven by the demands of our customers in geographic locations. So for example, in New York, if we're selling sightseeing tours, it's often that same supplier is also selling, tickets to the sightseeing tours that they have partnerships with, for example, right? So in a post-COVID world, I'm a huge advocate that the first thing that's going to come back is local and domestic tourism. I think if I was living in Paris, for example, it would be awesome if I could actually go to the Louvre and not be surrounded by 100,000 people. That would be an experience that I would love to enjoy. Same thing in Rome. So the ability to have API connections across platforms, I think, is here already. It's just not as prevalent. It could be one of the driving forces that come out of post-COVID. The second part, just to go back to your question with Maria, is some of the things that we're seeing as opportunities to build onto the platform is virtualization, introduction of any of that type of stuff. So we're seeing a lot of our suppliers and customers now learn how to work remotely, and what type of tools are they going to need to do that. There's a huge opportunity for remote res staff, res agents. I think there's an opportunity there. There's going to be tools that come out of that. I think the other big challenge that we see right now is the coming part of the seams is cancellations, refunds, and the massive volume that we've seen across our platforms as a result of that. There's new tools, there's new innovation that has to be done there. And I think also the ability to put back in the hands of the consumer the power to make changes easily to their reservations, whether it's cancellations or moving those reservations off into the future. It's not something that you see in tours and activities. It's something that we see in airlines, hotels, and transportation. That's table stakes type material. I think it's a change that could come to this industry. So those are opportunities that I see across the board. It's not all doomsday, I don't think, on our end. I think there's lots of innovation that's going to come. I would introduce AI chatbots into there too.
So Scott, there's a question here. It's directed to you from Matthias around your partnership with Google. I presume this is referring to Reserve with Google.
Yep.
What's your view on kind of Reserve with Google? This is good for the industry. This is good for operators.
I think that the partnership with Google is terrific. I think that a lot of folks, it's probably it's great for providers. I think it's great for consumers and the booking workflows. I think it can be damaging to folks that stand in the middle or in between in that chain. Obviously, one of the things that integration does provide is a more direct path between the operator and the traveler. And so anyone who sits between those two parties in the supply chain is going to possibly be encroached upon in that. But I think ultimately it's a great experience for the consumer, and I think every provider we've talked to loves it. So I think it's healthy, and I also think that the way Google has approached integration is fundamentally different than other partners in distribution ecosystem. Just how the mechanics of that integration really does permit things like dynamic pricing, like yield management, or any sort of algorithm that might sit on the supply side as it translates directly to how that reservation might work to the consumer. Whereas other integrations really rely on like mapping different structures and pricing structures and otherwise, and it can be encumbering in that way that doesn't permit that. What I think is a very valuable evolution in booking technology and in this space that really, more smarter yield management, automation, and dynamic pricing need to come to the fore. And I think that the way that integration, even the mechanics of it, would permit that to happen.
I know that though there are a lot of folks on the OTA side who I think are a little bit nervous about what Google is doing, as Google is stepping into that intermediary side. So, I mean, Hjalti, what's your view on this? The CEO of TripAdvisor has been, he's been fairly outspoken on the risk that Google poses to, not just to tours and activities, but online travel agencies, kind of broadly, and the power they have in their marketplace. At the same time, I know that TripAdvisor TripAdvisor Experiences and has been a partner for Reserve with Google. So it's kind of like you guys are, you're kind of sitting on both sides of the fence there. What's your take?
First of all, I'm a great fan of Google. I think they took a very wise strategy. They have executed very well. They basically own the internet. You start your search with Google, and they have done a tremendous job. They're helpful for our industry in terms of, our suppliers can be found on Google. They are, of course, not a charity. So they're not here to, take their money and hand out to others. They will want a bigger part of the pie. And that is simply the reality. And if the others don't want them to take over, they need to fight back a little bit and be more clever than them, which is not easy because these are bloody clever people, and I'm a big fan.
That was definitely a complimentary answer. But I've certainly heard from plenty of people from our industry who are pretty concerned about their plans there. Anyone, want to chime in with a different point of view? I mean, what should operators, Maria, do you have a perspective on this? Like I see it now, like in the sense, okay, if I can get a booking through Google and right now Reserve isn't charging a fee to the operator, that's great, but that's not always going to be the case, especially as Reserve grows and you have another big player that can begin to really control the market. I mean, are you guys looking at working with Reserve with Google, and what's your advice to operators there?
Definitely, we're looking to work with Google. Definitely. I think they are going to be one of the greatest players in our sector. And I think, I totally agree with Scott. Google opens up the way to yielding, something that we do not do in our sector. So every big player comes in and makes us better and to optimize our features and our sector and our businesses. So I'm very positive on working with Google and on having more resellers and OTAs. Since we're more on the operator side, I think this is good.
Well,
I would like on top of that. Yeah. Can I add something?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
About the features, we also need more automation in Channel Manager. Channel Manager should be more automated. We are only on availability and pricing. We need more. We need more features. So every big player comes in, makes us even better. Kory made a really interesting point about some of the innovation that this situation is imposing on us. So, Maria, is there a feature how are you changing your product roadmap as a result of what you're experiencing today, or what you expect will be different in the future? Are you building something new or different that you weren't planning on even a month or 2 months ago? This is for me or Kory?
Yeah, for you, Maria. Yeah, just a quick follow-up.
Oh, okay. Yes, we're optimizing many features. We now are working on yielding, on pricing. And on our channel manager, we try to enrich our APIs and automation and that. So, and we have started to do so 2 months ago.
Okay. And Hjalti, what about for you? Is this, how will, because there's a couple of questions around this from our attendees. So I just how is this situation that we're in? Are you developing something now that you had never really occurred to your team to develop before?
We're changing our roadmap a little bit, or should I say expediting some other things and delaying other things. I think what is likely to happen now is that there will be more collaboration in the space. You simply have not much to lose. And we saw this in the app building or the rebound of the Icelandic tourism industry a few years back, that competitors started working together. So we created this Bokun marketplace where a supplier could cross-sell another supplier, bundle your products together, and which, competitors didn't want to do before, but then they started experimenting with it. And I think in 2017, if I remember correctly, 15% of all products sold were combo products. So this would have been impossible a few years before, simply because of the political landscape. And I think the same might be happening now. So basically, we have taken a few steps in our industry, which is that, we have a few larger players that need to and want to work with the others that maybe do not have same amount of products on their systems, because nobody can do everything. We cannot create everything for everybody. It's just not possible. So why not work with others and let others focus on their niches and try to work together in the interest of the whole industry? That is at least our vision. And I think the situation now will only help that move faster.
So let me go through there a couple of questions from our attendees that I want to tackle. So Scott, I'll start with you. For companies that are basically in hibernation now, how should they think about kind of reopening? What are the different types of travel or trips? I know, Kory, you talked a bit about kind of domestic. You believe strongly in that. If I'm an operator, when do I restart, and how? What should I be thinking about?
Yeah. Well, in answering that question, I really am looking to some of our partners who specialize in marketing, as well as just any data that we might see, and success stories that are shared by customers. There are a lot of experiments going on, a lot of failed experiments, but there are some successes out there. So a couple points there. I think now is downtime that's unprecedented. We might be going nuts at home, but it's also an opportunity to dig into the website that you know that you need to improve, or improve your SEO, or get fresh photos up and sort of spruce things up in that category. What's your messaging? What's your strategy on marketing campaign once it does open up? Just being prepared in that regard. And there are a lot of partners that we're hosting webinars that will speak to that. I think one interesting idea that was even recently brought to our attention, a partner, PhotoFlow, and a zipline company, basically had partnered to share digital photos of all of their guests that had previously gone on outings. And the open rates were 83%, and the click-throughs were 13%. So a lot of people are sitting at home right now looking at content. Google search is an all-time high right now. And so now is like maybe a time not to directly advertise to book a tour, but it might be an opportunity to really share rich content, or through creative means to re-engage your audiences. There's a lot of local consumption, a lot of repeat visitors. Now is the time to maybe sort of re-engage with them in a less direct way. These are just ideas that surface that we see are successful by metrics that I just shared. So I think that those would be two broad categories: is get ready, do the things you never have time to do once the season is up and running, and then maybe look in the rearview mirror to surface really great content to sort of become top of mind to your customers.
Yeah, there's an interesting question here from Abdul about kind of the nature in which travel might change in the future, especially around attractions, if we have to implement social distancing just as a matter of course as travel is eased. Maybe Kory, I know you work with a lot of ferry companies and transportation companies, so higher volumes in in compact spaces, or so if suddenly a ferry or a bus operator, they have to abide by social distancing, is there a role for tech to play where you can kind of space people out? You're optimizing when people are coming. Is that going to be a part of the necessary feature set for ResTech in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, right now, April 16th, it's hard to sit and adjust roadmaps immediately. It feels a little knee-jerk reactionary, but I think that'll develop the next 30, 60 days. But just some insight there, what we've seen is, we have busing companies who have pivoted, as I mentioned a little bit, into food distribution, but also patient delivery and travel. And really the question there is mostly about their staff. How do they protect their staff? How do they make it safe for them, essentially? From a ResTech platforms perspective, that sounds a little bit like yield management, balanced with inventory management in some cases, as they pivot their businesses. But I think it's a little bit early to tell. I think it'd be great to have those types of conversations in 30, 60 days just to see what actually comes out of that.
Anyone else have a perspective on this, like social distancing features? Is that something that you're looking at, Hjalti? Is that something that you guys are looking at Bokun?
I think it's just obvious that there will be requirements for social distancing, and what we're also seeing is that some of our customers have asked for how did they put this? On their websites that they're, what was the word, social distancing friendly or something of that nature already. How this is going to play out from a tech perspective, I just don't know. But I'm sure that the new normal is much closer to some distancing than before. I just don't think people were very or at least not people around me, were very much thinking about, diseases and how this spreads so fast. And I think now that's in our head and probably will be for a long time. So,
I think about some of the most popular attractions and the lines that I've waited in to get into that, and what that's going to look like, in the future. I mean, Maria, if we have to, if the Acropolis has to observe social distancing, what is it going to look like for us to experience that? Or is that something that you're thinking about at Travelotopos?
Of course, we have informed and we have prepared our operators on implementing the social distancing, and the technology can support that with the time slots and the availability. So definitely the next day won't be the same like the previous one. We have to be prepared. And now reservation systems and channel managers are playing a great role on that. So yes, this is something we have prepared and informed our operators.
Yeah, well, so we're just about the top of the hour. But I've got just a couple of quick questions I want to wrap up with. So this is for you, Scott. There's actually several people who are asking for the link to your webinar on virtual tours on Friday. So if you wouldn't mind just pulling that up in the next minute or so and putting that into public chat, I think that would be great. Or I'll say if we can't do that in time, then just I would say go to the Xola website, and I'm sure if you search around, you can find something there. There's a quick question I want to throw to you, Hjalti. This actually came to me offline. So we had an operator who asked a question. So I know you've got a booking policy where if there's a cancellation within a month, then you don't keep the cancellation or the booking fees. You give that back to the operator. But this operator has had a lot of cancellations for bookings that were made well in advance of 1 month, and she's not getting the booking fees back from Bokun, and so she's a little frustrated about that. So are you looking at amending your policy for these COVID-related cancellations?
Yeah, I heard about this actually. This was brought to my knowledge this morning, today. So we have not had any concerns that have reached me anyways from our customers before this. And we take all such, concerns very, very seriously. And I find it very likely that we will simply amend our policies to accommodate exactly this.
Okay. So last question. I want to bring this up before we wrap. I know we've gone a little bit over, and we are recording this session, and we'll make it available for those of you who have to go. But it's interesting to me. I think one of the hottest topics in our industry, maybe 18 months ago, was we had a couple of online travel agencies come in and acquire. So TripAdvisor obviously acquired Bokun. Booking.com came in and acquired Fair Harbor. There's a smaller acquisition in Germany with Jochen Schweitzer and Regiondo, I think last year. And that was a hugely debated topic. I think I see maybe one question in here towards the bottom, but does that matter anymore? Does anyone even care? Is there any impact? I mean, Scott, what's your take right now on kind of OTA-owned reservation systems versus independent reservation systems today?
I was looking for that link and I found it, but I'll tune into the question which you just asked. I guess I maintain, a diplomatic stance in the sense that I know that there are questions of conflict of interest and what does that look like. I think it's good to be mindful that is certainly a consideration, but I think that we're all in the industry trying to provide the services that help small businesses, and connectivity is important. And some businesses that don't want it can shut it off. I think if you were to adopt a system where you don't have optionality to shut things off, that's when it becomes more encumbering to the business, and I think more of a dangerous road to go down. I think that we really we build software to serve the business, right? Whatever the business needs and wants, we supply. And once we start limiting what the business can and can't do or how they do it, that's when it becomes more of a consideration where you should be cautious about your choices. I'm going to
translate that in slightly less diplomatic language by saying the implication there is a res system that may be owned by an OTA may, as a result, be influenced by that OTA and make decisions that are not necessarily in the best interest of the operators. Would be the implication, is what from your concern there. Kory, what about you? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the same thing. I think that's going to be a concern for any of our suppliers or customers, is that are we now aligned with one sole OTA entity, and what does that actually mean and deliver? I think any acquisition, if that's to happen in the future, has to balance that and learn from the lessons that have happened from the ones in the past, for sure. I think during this time, there's probably, just going back on the local tourism, domestic travel, and if this crisis continues to go on for the next 9, 12, 18 months, I think the actual potential plays, or a scenario that I can envision there, is within the ResTech platforms themselves, whether that means a scenario of interoperability between our systems so as to facilitate transactions within a local destination is one of them. I mean, look, at the end of the day, 150 ResTech platforms are all building the same features. We probably don't need 150. So there's probably an execution play. I can imagine a number of scenarios there, depending on how long this goes on.
Maria, what's your take on OTAs owning res systems? Good for the industry, not good?
I think that this is a discussion that doesn't care the operators. When operators decide which reservation software they're going to use, they don't examine which are the founders or who has acquired the companies. However, so far the hotel industry has indicated that hoteliers trust independent booking softwares and channel managers. So I think there's space for all of us. And the acquisitions haven't affected us at all. We have a very good relationship with the OTAs. We have a very good and reliable channel manager that is integrated with all major hotels now. So I think this is a discussion that is interesting between us, our market, small market, and not for the operators. This is my opinion.
Don't think it hits their day to day. Hjalti, what's your? I'll give you the final word, since you're obviously one of the the acquirees. So what's your response?
If the question is it good for the industry or not, I can only talk about what Bokun and TripAdvisor did. So TripAdvisor had the strategy of bringing the industry online 2 years ago. They bought us, and the result is that quite a lot of the industry has gone online ever since. And yes, it has happened through Bokun. And as I said, we have around 72% of all the products on our system. But if somebody doubts that it's good for the industry, that it's online, then I would have serious doubts about that myself. I think it's very, very good for the industry that it's online, and TripAdvisor has taken massive investments into helping the industry with that.
So then the one big concern then from an operator's perspective, well, I'm an operator and I use Bokun, and now I have an OTA partner that has complete visibility into my data and my operations, and which really is almost a kind of competitive risk. So what do you say to an operator that has those concerns?
Well, I say we will not share your data with the account managers of TripAdvisor and Viator that you are talking to. So there's no flow of information between there. And I get it. I mean, it is very sensitive information. I mean, think about it. There's 50,000 contracts done through the Bokun marketplace with commissions. Of course, this is sensitive information. I get it. And it would be very hard for a company that is negotiating with an OTA their commissions, if all the commissions for everybody else. So we have said this publicly. We do not share this information, and so far this has not been an issue for us. It's more an issue for the media and others who want to talk about this, which I'm glad that you're doing, actually.
Well, that was a nice save there at the end. I thought you were going to complain that we keep beating the drum on this one, but
every time this fear-mongering starts, we get a spike in signups. So I don't know how it's going to play out during this COVID series, but after COVID, please start again.
Right. Well, look, we're a little bit past the hour, so we've gone over. So I want to thank all of our speakers, our presenters here today. Thank you all very much and for the extra time. I've actually got another page of questions I haven't even gotten to, so we're going to have to continue this on.
Thanks for listening to the Tourpreneur podcast. Be sure to visit tourpreneur.com to join the conversation and access the show notes, including links to the resources mentioned on today's episode. This is Tourpreneur.